What's up, everybody? Welcome to another brand new episode of the 5280 podcast on the MHRT Network. I am your host, Mundungus Creevy, back after God knows how long I was gone. Alongside my co-host, as always, Glenn Hauser at Gage Madrid. And we never seem to be able to get everybody together because obviously we're missing Cameron Haktua Parker, but he'll be back eventually.
You are the king of lack of context, especially in introductions.
I love it. That's what makes it fun. He'll know it. Well, he might not know what it is, but he'll have fun with it. So it's fine. How you guys doing?
Doing great, man. Good to see you again.
I know, right? It's been forever. Now, obviously, I didn't get to recap the first preseason game, but that's fine because we got the second one. We got the one against the Packers, and I put it in the title. We layeth the Smackdown on the Packers. It wasn't even close.
Yeah, 27-2, and that was a culmination from Friday's joint practices where, especially on the defensive side of the ball, Denver dominated. They were showing exotic looks to the Packers offense, and the Packers really didn't have any answers for it. Hats off to Vance Joseph and his unit for really putting the smackdown on them. And then that translated into the game where obviously the looks are going to be more vanilla, but I thought that Green Bay would at least come in with a little bit more physicality, energy, and intensity with their backups trying to earn a roster spot, and it felt like they just came out flat the entire game. And the Broncos, on the other hand, were high energy, flying around, dapping each other up after making big plays. They were playing with juice out there, and it showed which team wanted it more, both in the practice as well as in the game.
Hey, and Matt LaFleur actually mentioned that, reference that he expected them to play better on Saturday, considering how badly beaten the Packers were in the Friday practice. So he was unimpressed. But a 27-2 beatdown, I don't care if they weren't playing, a couple dozen starters or so. To me, it didn't matter. Our team from start to finish really just looked very, very solid.
Yeah, and it's not like Zach Wilson on that sack. It's not like Wilson looked bad. Like he spun out instead of stepping into the pocket, spun into a sack. I get it. But obviously you have Bo Nix, you have Jarrett Stidham, you have Zach Wilson. And I don't think at this point there's any question on who should be the starter.
Right. It's been trending that way for about 2 weeks now, based on the practice reps, based on the way that he looked in the Indianapolis game, based on the way that he looked, especially in those joint practices. That's where I feel like he locked up the job, was on Friday. He looked very composed against Green Bay's ones. He was very solid with his decision-making, as expected. His footwork was clean, which was an issue from the week 1 game that he significantly worked to clean up, you can tell. And just the little nuances, you can tell that he watched the film from the previous week and was like, all right, let's clean this up. And it showed. So the culmination from start to finish of this whole offseason, all roads have led to Bo Nix.
Yeah, it's one of those things too where people are wondering why hasn't Bo been named officially the week 1 starter, and the consensus seems to be that it's very important in the locker room to show that he earned it and wasn't just handed it to him as the first round pick of the Broncos this year. I think we're at the point though where it's so blatantly obvious that like Kay Adams was saying to Peyton, the gig is over. Like, let's get going. Let's name him as starter and move on. So,
yeah.
I think Sean also feels like Bo wants to feel like he earned it. And that's important to a guy like Bo who works his ass off every single day trying to get better. I think he's a guy who needs to feel like he earned it rather than it was just handed to him. That's the way that this guy's wired, and I absolutely love that.
Yeah, so I kind of want to break this down from Noah Bryan saying only weakness is O-line and DB depth. Going to be a fun year, boys. I don't think that the O-line has looked bad. I don't think they look like they did at the end of the season, but they had all season last year to get it together. and you've got 3 different quarterbacks playing behind you, there's going to be some differences because the quarterbacks are different. I haven't had a problem with the DB depth. I actually thought it's looking pretty good. You know, there's 3 different guys all vying for the CB2 spot, which I think is probably going to go to Riley Moss. You know, Damari Mathis has been in there. You still got Jaquan McMillan, who's going to be your slot. And then you have Levi Wallace still vying for a spot. Like I didn't think our depth was bad.
I think it's more in the safety room where JL Skinner has had a rough couple of weeks. He didn't look great in Indianapolis, and you can tell that he's got like an intensity to his game. He flies around and is always trying to attack the ball. Sometimes that's to his detriment. Sometimes he overplays his hand a little bit and he ends up getting beat bad. He obviously tried to play the ball there on that punt and it ended up getting blocked. That was a special teams play where you like the intensity, but obviously he just kind of got out of position there and it ended up beating him. I think that really it's the safety depth when you look at behind, you know, Brandon Jones and PJ Locke. And then you've got Devon Key, who has looked good too. But that's probably the only question mark. But you do see some young guys like Keaton Smith. He really stepped up. He's listed as a corner, but he's been playing safety. He, on the interception that he had on Sunday, was playing single high safety. I was at the game, had the behind the field view of the all 22, and I saw that play develop. I saw Smith crash in on it. So I feel like those questions are actually kind of starting to solve themselves out a little bit, but there are some questions on will these young players be able to translate in the regular season when the calls are more complex? It's not just basic vanilla defenses, stuff like that. So that's, I feel like, where we are right now in the safety room. As far as the offensive line, some of the backup pieces were not good. Like Frank Crum, he was really bad out there. Will Sherman, he was the one who caused the safety. Crum was the one who got beat when Jarrett Stidham just kind of yucked it up there and it got intercepted. Alex Palszewski got beat a few times, had a holding penalty, had a false start. And he's a guy that's looked really good. Who else?
Forsyth,
yeah, didn't have a great game either. Like a lot of the backup offensive linemen really were not playing well on Sunday. So that's probably where the concern is. I feel like the starters have overall played well.
Well, and when you have Bo Nix, when you have Bo Nix in there, Bo Nix didn't take a sack yet in the preseason. So, and I don't know if that's him managing the pocket or if that's the O-line not letting the pressure get to him.
I think it's a little bit of both, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say combination of both. You know, you mentioned the Skinner penalty on that punt. Looking at the replay on that, it certainly didn't look like. I mean, it could have gone either way. That was not a violent roughing the kicker. But you know, as far as Keydron Smith, do you think that he will make the team with these 2 interceptions, or what's your take on the case he's made for being on the 53?
I think that the way he's played in practice as well as the way he's played in these 2 preseason games, it's kind of hard to let a guy like that go. You could potentially try to practice squad him, but you're exposing him to waivers, and no doubt somebody on another team is watching this film and can see, oh, there's this cat 43. He can make some plays out there. So I feel like he's a guy you just don't want to expose to waivers. He probably makes the team based on that alone.
Yeah. Did they ever explain why it was roughing the kicker, not running into the kicker? Because he barely touched him.
No, it never got explained. I think it was kind of a BS call, in my opinion.
Okay, so
Sean Payton waved it off too on the sideline. So even Sean Payton thought it was bull.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously Bo Nix is the big story, the big thing with the offseason with the Broncos. Now you have a lot of Broncos country that's excited for Bo Nix, and then you have another part of Broncos country that's like, oh, it's just been preseason. He's playing against twos. We don't know what he's actually going to look like yet. So, and you guys know that every time there's a Broncos game on, Bill is lighting up my phone. So, I want to kind of break down.
He's dialing his rotary over and over again.
I kind of want to break down and like go over what you actually need to be looking for in Bo Nix in the preseason, and not just looking at the stats and going, oh, well, you know, he went 4 or 5, but that was an ugly pass. Like, he's not ready yet. What are we actually looking for with Bo Nix in the preseason to know whether or not he's going to be successful in the regular season?
First of all, I preach this every single show, it seems like. How's he operating pre-snap at the line of scrimmage, identifying the Mike linebacker, making sure everybody's set and on the same page, just calling the play in the huddle, using his cadence at the line of scrimmage as a weapon. That's the first step. The second thing is, how's he progressing through his reads? Is he taking what the defense gives him? Is he not leaving open guys on the field? Is he passing up them? You know, just is he going through and making the right decision out there? Also, you know, watch his feet. Are his feet set when he makes the throws? Is he kind of skittish in the pocket? Is he trying to rush through things a little bit? Those things are all technique and decision-making based stuff that I don't give a crap who you're going against. All that stuff has to be sound. Otherwise, the play is going to go south. So if all of that stuff is sound and Bo Nix is just able to execute what's asked of him, that's really what we're looking for. Is he just able to go out there and do what he's asked to do?
And also the feedback that you've heard from the players about his presence in the huddle, just how he carries himself amongst the group. You know, it seemed like in the first game against the Colts, that was the first 2 plays, he looked a little jumpy, you know, ended up short arming the passes. His feet were all over the place, and it was like, oh, you know, we've seen this before. And he really just settled in. And, you know, what's nice to hear is that a lot of, you know, like the Chase Daniels of the world, the guys that have played in, you know, he had 7 years in Sean Payton's offense. And here he is talking about that this guy really seems to have a handle on the offense, and he seems like he's going to be something. You know, it's I couldn't be more excited. I think we've earned the right to be, you know, optimistic, a little giddy about this, because of he's the best easily of the options that we've had in the last 8 years, without question. So, you know, we stand a good chance of improvement. I think we can hit double digits and wins with Bo if he can stay healthy. And I think the team believes in him.
Mm-hmm. And I think that what the expectations are for the national media is quite different than what the expectations are here in Denver. We have had to stomach the last 8 years of incompetent quarterback play. People who just can't get the basic shit right, you know? This is different. Bo Nix is actually able to execute the basic stuff. He's actually able to just do what's asked of him, you know? And the fact that we're seeing an offense that is flowing, it looks like it's clean operationally. There's no skittishness. There's no Russell Wilson spinning into sacks. There's no Drew Lock fumbling versus the Cincinnati Bengals to lose us that game. There's none of those type of plays, at least from the jump. The fact that we're seeing signs of competent quarterback play is what gives us hope here in Denver. I think that the national media is basing it off of, all right, can Bo Nix be up there with like the Patrick Mahomes, the Josh Allens of the world? Right now, we don't need him to be. We just need him to be a top 20 quarterback that can efficiently execute the offense and not hold the team back like Russell Wilson did last year.
Well, and like you can tell the state of the Broncos quarterbacks over the last 8 seasons by how excited we get over a quarterback being able to take a drop, boom, boom, boom on the progression, step up in the pocket and throw it. That's like basic quarterbacking. We're all like, oh my God, he can do it. That's
Been
how
a
bad it's
long
been.
time, man.
And then you look at so take the Steelers game, for example, where Russell Wilson started. Everyone was excited for Russell Wilson to go to Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson looked awful against twos. He took 3 sacks and got 1 first down in 5 possessions. Sound familiar?
And admittedly, one of those sacks I will definitely blame on the offensive line. The other 2, classic Russ, skittish in the pocket, steps into the sack. We've seen that play out for the last 2 years here in Denver, and it gives me PTSD. At this point in time, if you're going to have another quarterback who's prone to doing that, Justin Fields will do that same thing, but at least he'll give you the splash plays. He'll give you the explosive runs. He'll give you the big plays with his arm. At this point, Russell Wilson offers much less of that upside, especially given his age. You have to start Justin Fields at this point if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's no reason to waste time with Russell Wilson here. I like Russ as a dude. I wish that it didn't end this way, but Russell Wilson is a guy who I feel like fails to accept where he is at this point in his career and fails to adapt his game to his diminishing skill set. And now he's found himself at a point where he might be out of a job because of it. And it's very sad because Russell Wilson at one point in time was a top 2, top 3 quarterback in the NFL.
Right. It's baffling what has happened to his career. I mean, for 10 years, he was statistically the best, if not up there, the quarterback in the NFC. And sure enough, look what happens. I mean, you're right, Gage. You got to start the younger guy, warts and all, because Russ his best days are so far in the rearview mirror. I mean, I said it to you guys the other day. He's played himself out of the Hall of Fame discussion, in my opinion. I don't even think he's going to be on the roster for week 2. And that was a game that was going to be, how are the fans going to react to Russ, when he comes back to Denver? I don't think he's ever coming back to Denver.
Yeah.
I don't either. I really don't. At this point, if he's not going to start, he's on a vet minimum deal in Pittsburgh with no guaranteed money. They can cut him with no financial repercussions. They've got Kyle Allen on the roster, who is a perfectly capable backup. Russell Wilson has made it clear he has no interest in being a backup quarterback. If that's the case, then maybe he's going to have to wait for a Joe Flacco-like opportunity with the Cleveland Browns, where the starter goes down and you need somebody who can step into that role to an already loaded team. And Pittsburgh is already a loaded team, and he's showcasing that he can't work with that. So I don't know, man. At this point in time, I don't think Russell Wilson's going to have many more opportunities in the NFL, and it's very sad.
Well, and the biggest weakness on the Steelers is the offensive line, which doesn't bode well for Russell Wilson. So I agree. I think Justin Fields should be the starter. I don't think there should be any question. And I think that they should do that sooner rather than later, just like with the Broncos should name Bo Nix the starter sooner rather than later. Do we know yet who's starting in the 3rd preseason game?
No.
Okay.
I'm going to assume it's going to be Jarrett Stidham because I think Bo Nix is not going to play.
Yeah. I mean, you would assume, right?
Yep. And at this point, I also think that we can officially put to bed any talks of Zach Wilson being QB2. He did not get any reps with the 2s during the joint practices, and that would have been a perfect opportunity to give him those reps, see what he can do, see if he has a chance to challenge Jarrett Stidham. And Sean Payton was like, no, I'm good. I'm barely going to give him any reps at all. I'm going to sprinkle him in here and there exclusively with the 3s. And then in the 2nd preseason game, despite the issues with the offensive line, which there were, I'm going to give Zach Wilson a little bit of a grade on the curve there. But he was still missing open guys. He was skittish in the pocket, held on to the ball too long. Zach Wilson did not look good on Sunday night. I feel like that put to bed any chance of him winning QB2. Zach Wilson is going to spend a year on the bench as the third string quarterback, learning, growing, and getting better. Maybe he'll have a Sam Darnold-like resurgence, but right now the flash plays are there, but the inconsistency is also there.
Yeah. So we'll keep breaking down the roster and who we think, like stock up, stock down, who we think is going to make the roster, and then we'll kind of sprinkle in some other former Broncos players that might have a shot because the starter sucks. Doug wants to know Damari Mathis or Riley Moss, who starts week 1?
Yeah, looks like it's going to be Riley Moss. He has been on an upward trajectory throughout the entire course of training camp. He looks like he is significantly improved from last year. His technique is better. He's always been a very physical player, so that's something that didn't necessarily need to improve, but it has improved, so that's a good thing as well. I think that Riley Moss has a very high ceiling, and I'm very excited for him, but I also have to shout out Damari Mathis. The dude has also made significant strides in his game. Last year, he got himself benched, was unplayable, and now he's at a point where he's gotten better with his technique. He's gotten better just not getting overly aggressive. We kind of talked about JL Skinner playing the ball a little bit too much and biting on double moves and stuff like that. We've seen less of that with Damari Mathis this offseason. He's improved, but Riley Moss is your clear-cut starter at that second boundary corner spot. And the Broncos low-key have a super stacked corner room with Pat Surtain, Riley Moss, and then Jaquan McMillan at that nickel. You've got Chris Abrams-Drain. You've got Levi Wallace there, who's going to be a key depth piece for you. The Broncos have some really good pieces there in the cornerback room. I think that Damari Mathis also makes the team. And safety, some of those pieces are starting to sort themselves out as well with the emergence of a couple of young guys like Devon Key and Keidron Smith. It's very impressive to see these young guys step up and start to answer some of the questions that we may have had early on and maybe some of the lingering questions that are still there.
Yeah. Damari Mathis has shown that he can bounce back from situations. If you remember that game against the Chargers when he had the 4 pass interference penalties, it was a nationally televised game. It just was not a good look for him. But he never let himself get down. And I don't know what the situation was last year, why he played so poorly, what his mindset was with that. But the fact that, we were all calling for his head. I mean, it was just like, get this guy off the field. He's a liability, was putting it lightly. And now he looks good. He's playing hard. He's really turned himself around. And the fact that this guy, in the face of adversity, continues to show that he doesn't let it stop him. I think that's an incredible characteristic that will help him make the team this year.
Yeah. So David's got an interesting question. You guys okay if I answer this one first and then
go for it?
Okay, good, because I was going to do it anyways. Question: do you fellas feel something else is missing from the team? I still think we have a pass rush problem. Like we're getting a little bit of pressure, but we're getting a little bit of pressure against our 1s versus their 2s, and I just feel like we're still missing that one dog as a pass rusher.
I will say though, Jonah Ellis might end up being that guy. The dude looked like a dog out there. Yes, it was against their 2s, but still, even in the joint practices, when he got work against their 1s, he was really working cats out there. You can tell he's one of those high motor players. He needs a couple more moves in his golf bag, a couple more clubs in order to really kind of complete his skill set as a pass rusher. That will come with time and with coaching. But right now, Jonah Ellis looks like a guy certainly with a very high ceiling in that room. Right now, they don't have an alpha guy, but with guys like Ellis playing better, Nick Benito also looked good. Baron Browning has been fantastic. they have guys who can emerge as that alpha, but right now at this point in time, they don't have that guy.
What do you think the Broncos do with Baron Brownie's contract?
It depends on what kind of year he has this year. If he can go out there, stay healthy, first of all. He said himself that this is really the first year in his entire NFL career where he has been completely healthy. If that's indeed the case, I mean, the dude still had, I believe it was 9 sacks last year, and he was still very productive in terms of pressure and just bringing that juice off the edge. If he's 100% healthy this year, he goes out there and he has a double-digit sack campaign, then the Broncos should extend him because the ceiling that he has, you see those flashes of Von Miller with his spin move, his little dip move. The dude is a very explosive edge rusher. And if he is completely healthy this year for the first time, like he says, then dude, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, and it's no offense against any of the pass rushers, like no insult at all, but it is kind of difficult for us to not expect greatness when it comes to pass rush, because I mean we just had 10 total years of Elvis Dumerville, Derek Wolfe, Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware. Like we expect that there's going to be pressure coming from the edges or the interior, and we haven't seen it. I mean, Von Miller, he was what, an inch away from the quarterback every play.
Mm-hmm. I'll also say that the interior pressure, you're seeing guys like Zach Allen, John Franklin Myers had a really nice pressure in that game. You're starting to see some guys step up on the interior. And then guys like DJ Jones, Malcolm Roach, Angelo Blackson, nice rotational pieces there. So I think that the defensive line, especially from an interior perspective, is very, very stacked this year. And we're going to see a lot more interior pressure because the Broncos went out and they prioritized that in the last 2 off seasons, bringing in especially the 2 big ticket guys in Zach Allen last year and John Franklin Myers this year.
And Zach Allen's sack, that was a 12-yard loss, but I don't think that happens with a first-string quarterback. I don't think a starter lets that happen. But it was still great to see him play.
And John Franklin Myers had the pressure on that play that flushed the quarterback out, and Zach Allen just hauled ass off of his double team like several yards down the field and slammed Sean Clifford to the ground. Like, it was insane, the motor play from Zach Allen on that one. Freaking awesome stuff.
Yeah. What about Owazurike? What do you think? What do you predict is going to happen there?
I think that he's a guy that is going to hang around on the roster for a while. Mike Kliss actually talked about this on the 9 News broadcast, where Owazurike, you really like his measurables, you really like the raw talent, and he's also one of those guys that if you were to put him on waivers, some other team is going to see that and be like, ooh, I really like this guy's potential. I'm going to claim him. So the Broncos may want to hold on to him because of that. And Mike Kliss seems pretty adamant that that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Probably wouldn't be good if the Vegas Raiders picked him up. Not be a good situation.
Oh God.
All right. So do we have any favorite stock up, stock down players?
Oh man, I'd have to think. I just got done kind of watching the tape. So stock up guys, Jonah Ellis, I can immediately think of. Alex Singleton has had a phenomenal preseason. That continued in the preseason game. I feel like Jarrett Stidham's stock is kind of up for me right now. I thought that he had a lot of BS that he had to deal with in the game. Offensive line issues, protection breakdowns, false starts, and he was still able to move the ball, make some plays happen, had that really sick rushing touchdown. So stock up. Stock down, pretty much the entire backup offensive line, honestly. Alex Palczewski, I still love him, but he did not play well. Will Sherman did not play well. Frank Crum did not play well. Almost all of the backup guys just really, really struggled out there on that offensive line. So I'd say they're definitely stock down. JL Skinner for me is unfortunately stock trending a little bit down. stock up. Nick Benito, I thought he was awesome in the game. Greg Dulcich had a couple of nice plays. I'd say just the entire offseason, Greg Dulcich stock up. Jaleel stock up. He looked awesome out there. Audric Estime stock down. Honestly, not explosive. I'm a little disappointed in what we've seen from Audric Estime so far. I'll let you guys go ahead and fill some more in, but that's kind of what I have so far.
I think stock up PJ Locke. You mentioned Singleton. It seems like PJ and Alex have the same energy level out there, and oftentimes are in the same area because they're just total blurs, not bearded blurs, but just blurs themselves. Stock up. Another stock up is Tim Patrick for me. Reports said he was on the at risk of getting cut, and then had great practice last week from all reports, and then to come back and score that touchdown. And that scene from the locker room of everybody celebrating him was just pretty spectacular. Stock down Troy Franklin. I have no idea what's happening there. Really an odd situation. Stock down Marvin Mims. Again, I'm not sure. I'm not down on Marvin, but I'm just saying, like, as far as, I felt like we were going to see a little bit more. I expected to see him earlier in games, and that's just not happening.
Yeah, I think Devon Keydron Smith, obviously we talked about them earlier, stock up on those two. I mean, it makes sense why Caden Stearns isn't on the team anymore. I mean, if you got Brandon Jones, JL Skinner, Devon Keydron Smith, like Caden Stearns on the team makes sense. I think after a rough first game, Blake Watson, I was impressed with. Estime down. You don't give up on the rookie, but I think he's been outplayed by Blake Watson. Even Tyler Beatty looked really good in the last game. I like both of those guys. Same thing with Troy Franklin. There's nothing. Not hearing good things. Marvin Mims really wasn't there. Didn't really do anything. I did like the Lil Jordan Humphrey, but it's the same thing that we kind of saw last year. So I don't think there's any stock up, stock down on him. Alex Forsyth, stock down. Wattenberg, I think, is pretty much locked up the center spot. I think that's about it. I don't think there's a whole lot more. Yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot more to grade on that.
I remember one more stock down, Samaje Perine.
Yes.
Yeah, stock is pretty much at an all-time low right now. I think that next week is going to be a Samaje Perine trade showcase game. We're going to probably see a lot of him early and often, and we're going to see if the Broncos can pump up his trade value as much as they can, maybe try to squeeze like a 6th round pick or something like that. But right now, Samaje Perine is very clearly not making this team. It's all about him trying to find a spot somewhere else.
And the reports are, if the Broncos do cut him, that Cincinnati would have a job in Cincinnati the next day. So maybe that's where you start. Can I get a 7th round pick? Can I get a 6th round pick? Can we swap positions? Because if that's the case and they really do want him, and he did play well there, he was pivotal against their Chiefs games that, in those Chiefs games, for Cincinnati. So why not start there? And it would be a shame if we couldn't get something for him, but he's definitely gone.
I've also heard Houston is a possibility. Pair him with Joe Mixon again, but this time down in Houston.
Wow.
So let's say that Samaje Perine is cut. How many running backs are you carrying? 4? And then if you're carrying 4, who?
So obviously Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin is going to be, and then Audric Estime, those guys are all locks. Obviously you're going to keep Michael Burton as your fullback. And I don't know at this point if you're going to keep Blake Watson or Tyler Beatty on the active roster. I think both of those guys are fighting for a practice squad role at this point. And if I had to go with one of them, it's probably going to be Blake Watson just because he's the younger, higher upside player. I think Beatty's had a good camp and a good preseason, but we kind of already know what Tyler Beatty is at this point. He spent the entire year on the practice squad last year. He has only played, I think, 1 or 2 regular season games for the Broncos, and those all came in 2022. I think at this point, you just go with the younger player, the higher upside player, if you're just using that practice squad spot to develop guys, you know?
So you're going 3 with the fullback.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mentioned him last week, but Nate Atkins, interesting prospect for this team. Can play tight end, can play fullback, could maybe step in on the line or be that extended lineman. What are the odds he makes this 53?
I think that the odds are definitely up there. I think he probably makes it as a tight end just by position name, but again, he can play tight end, he can play fullback. He's got all kinds of different roles that he can use. He's good for the Broncos to be able to mix up their personnel groupings, but I know that he wouldn't make the roster over Michael Burton as a pure fullback because Burton has been an absolute dog, and the Broncos love what he brings to the table on special teams as well as in the offense. And I feel like Nate Atkins, it's kind of the same thing where he can bring value on special teams, especially with the new kickoffs. He's a bigger body up front. So I think Nate Atkins makes it with his versatility and his special teams value as well.
So we just went over running back. I think the next biggest question offensively is wide receivers. I think we're pretty set on who the top 3 are. You're looking at Sutton, you're looking at Patrick, and you're looking at Josh Reynolds. So then are we going 7 overall and keeping like Vele, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Troy Franklin? What are we looking at after the top 3?
So I think it's going to be Sutton, Patrick, Reynolds, Devon Vele, Marvin Mims, and Troy Franklin. I still have, it's hard to put Troy Franklin there, but I'm going to ultimately put him there because of the draft pedigree, the high upside, but he has been sorely disappointing, but he's also not a player that you want to give up on this early in his career. So he's definitely going to be there. I think that guys like Brandon Johnson, Michael Bandy, Lil Jordan Humphrey, those are all practice squad guys that you can elevate onto the active roster. The Broncos did that all year long with Little Jordan Humphrey. They'd waive him. They'd bring him back. They'd sign him onto the practice squad. They'd elevate him. They'd bring him up to the active roster, all kinds of stuff that they would do roster manipulation wise. So I think that those guys have made the team in that role because they've all played well. I think kind of your odd man out here is Jalen Virgil.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, so that brings it down to Jalen Virgil, Brandon Johnson, Philip Dorsett, Lil Jordan Humphrey, David Sills, and Michael Bandy.
And David Sills, he's also played well. That's going to be another tough one that I just think is kind of an odd man out, but he's played some good football too.
So how many receivers will go on the practice squad, do you think?
I think 3. I think it's going to be Brandon Johnson, Little Jordan Humphrey, and Michael Bandy.
Okay. So 3 out of 16. All right. Almost 20%.
And maybe you could replace Michael Bandy with like a David Sills or somebody along those lines. Or I don't think Virgil, but maybe a David Sills.
Okay. Yeah, I can't see them cutting Troy Franklin. I mean, they traded up for him. He was Bo's guy at Oregon. I can't imagine that they're going to, bounce him from the team and this early on. I'm be interesting to know, and we'll never know, but the conversations with Bo and Troy behind the scenes, like what's going on with that,
All right, so we've looked at the previous 2 preseason games. How about the upcoming preseason game? What are we looking for? Are we expecting any starters, or is this going to be a second, third, fourth string kind of fight it out for a roster spot game?
We have not heard anything yet from Sean Payton, but if I had to bet, I would say starters are not going to play in this game. I would anticipate Bo Nix will be named as QB1. By that point, I imagine that Riley Moss will be named as the second corner. I imagine that Cody Barton will be named as the other linebacker alongside Alex Singleton. Those are your big position battles. I think those will all be settled, and Sean Payton will be comfortable officially just putting all your starters in bubble wrap up until Seattle. I think that another reason that it's trending in that direction is they could have gone in for another drive afterwards in that preseason game, and they just didn't put him out there. They were comfortable bringing in Jarrett Stidham in the twos. I think Sean Payton has seen enough, so I strongly doubt we see any starters. It's probably going to be Jarrett Stidham starting the game. He'll play the first half. Zach Wilson will play the second half at quarterback. It's going to be all the rotational guys on defense trying to make the team. Yeah, this is basically going to be almost like the old fourth preseason game.
Yeah, Graham, Gage believed it would be Stidham as the backup and not Wilson. I mean, you could make an argument financial-wise that it would make sense to have Wilson, but play-wise, Stidham probably going to be the backup would be the assumption.
Because we're not really penny pinching at this point, right? I mean, the P. Ryan's going to free up some cash. I don't know any other big cuts that would happen.
No, I think that was only a discussion when Wilson and Stidham are going back and forth like pretty even. At that point, it's like, well, Wilson's cheaper, so stick with him. But if it seemed pretty obvious that Jarrett Stidham is ahead of Wilson. Now, that's not saying a lot. I'm not saying that Jarrett Stidham is like the next Tom Brady. Like, he's a good average quarterback.
He's what you want in a backup quarterback. He's a guy that can go in there, efficiently execute your offense. He's not going to make any big splash plays. He's not going to put the ball in harm's way either. So he's pretty much your ideal backup quarterback that can carve out a 10, 15-year career in that role. You know, Chase Daniel was a guy who I believe he's made the most money out of any NFL backup quarterback. And the dude is now a highly respected or starting to become a highly respected member of the media. So I think that Jarrett Stidham is almost kind of like a Chase Daniel. He can have a long career as a backup and then go into media afterwards and probably be pretty good at it.
Mm-hmm. So we've talked Broncos. I want to talk a couple teams that need to kind of get humbled a little bit, get some perspective on your stupid roster decisions. We already talked about the Steelers. Good luck with Russell Wilson. I hope you enjoy that mess. Next, we need to talk about the Raiders. They just named Gardner Minshew as their starter. Now, in my mind, there's a reason why Gardner Minshew's been on 4 different teams. He's a backup.
I think that he's kind of almost like a Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's like probably one of the worst starters in the NFL, but one of the best backups. You know, he's almost like that Jarrett Stidham. He can go out there. He can efficiently execute the offense. He can make some big plays off schedule. That's one of the things that he does well, but operating on time, in rhythm, and structure has kind of been an issue for Gardner Minshew, and I think that's mostly why he's had a low ceiling. He doesn't have the greatest arm talent in the NFL. I love him, but he kind of has a bit of a noodle arm. But he's obviously got that swagger. He's got that moxie. Guys in the locker room obviously drive towards him as a leader. So I think that Gardner Minshew has a place in the NFL, but again, there's a reason why he seems to jump from team to team every single year. He's that guy that will solve your quarterback problem temporarily, but he's not the guy that you want to roll into for the next 3, 4, 5 seasons as your guy.
And I'm going to step in. I'm not going to allow Mike to throw any Gardner Minshew slander when he's a Sam Hartman guy.
Whoa!
I couldn't hold Gardner's cut-off jeans shorts.
Listen. You don't talk about the future GOAT like that, okay? You leave Sam Hartman out your mouth.
The future UFL GOAT.
I just said GOAT. You heard me. But no, when you look at the rankings and everybody, national media, that was power ranking and ranking teams, they had the Raiders at like 15, 16, 17, higher, 14, 13. And you can't base your entire opinion on preseason games because of who they're going against. But their last preseason game, both quarterbacks were horrible. The defense looked bad. The offensive line was horrible. No, he did not. You shut your mouth. The
Mike's
Raiders
buying a lock of it on eBay.
I'm checking Google right now to see if it's accurate.
It's gonna plant
like the Raiders just looked bad, and I until the Chargers prove otherwise, the Chargers are going to charge her, right? So I don't see why it's not realistic to put the Broncos second in the West.
I don't either. And that's actually where I have them, is second in the West. I feel like they've got the coaching to be second in the West. They've got the young talent to be second in the West. They've got all the potential in the world, especially with a young quarterback who seems to be showcasing that he's got a pretty high ceiling for what he's being asked to do. Just execute this Sean Payton offense. It's all about situation where your young quarterback goes. Bo Nix could not have gone to a better situation in terms of Sean Payton. And that's why I feel like this team has that high of a ceiling. And like you said with the Raiders, man, they have not looked good in the preseason. Both quarterbacks played poorly. They have talent. They, without a doubt, have talent. They've got guys like Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins on that defense. They've got Devontae Adams, Brock Bowers offensively, Zamir White. Zamir White, Dylan Laube, some good young running backs. Shout out Dylan Laube, University of New Hampshire. But no, I think that the Raiders have those pieces, but there's also a lot of question marks about putting it all together. They've not been able to do so for the last several years. And Antonio Pierce did a good job towards the end of the year last year, but he kind of almost looks like a fish out of water this year, just the way that they went about this quarterback competition. He made some questionable in-game decisions during that preseason game against Dallas. I think that there are a lot of question marks about how this thing is all going to come together in Las Vegas, and wouldn't be surprised at all if Devontae Adams demands a trade midway through the year. Wouldn't be surprised if maybe some other guys demand trades as well, because this feels like something that is very destined to fall apart. And with the Chargers, like you said, there's a lot of hope and optimism there with Jim Harbaugh, but Chargers are the Chargers, man. They're never able to stay healthy. Justin Herbert is already dealing with an injury. They're already showing signs of being their old self. At the end of the day, I believe Jim Harbaugh is a good coach and he's a winner, but is he good enough to overcome an incompetent Chargers organization? Time will tell.
Yeah. So that covers the AFC West. You got the Raiders still looking for a quarterback. You got Broncos who found their quarterback. You got the Chargers who have an injured quarterback, and you got the Chiefs who have a trash quarterback. So now we have
real quick on Antonio Pierce. You almost wonder, he's being sued. They're trying to Hyundai is trying to garnish his wages, or Nissan, I should say.
Same thing.
They're trying to garnish his wages. There's bankruptcy involved. I guess $28 million owed, or 4.5, to another entity. So be interesting to know if that distraction with personal finances is playing a part in maybe him feeling some pressure on the field and not making some very good decisions. But the Raiders struggling and some turmoil bound to happen, I'm all for it. And I do think that Devontae Adams is going to be looking to get moved sooner than later, especially with the quarterback situation just being in flux as it is.
Yeah,
Devontae's not getting any younger, man. This is probably the last couple of years of his prime, and he knows that. I think that he's going to want to go reunite with his boy Aaron over there on the Jets and try to see if he can run it back with Aaron and get another Super Bowl. I don't know if the Jets are actually equipped to make that happen, even with Devontae Adams, but we'll see, man. I mean, obviously, that's several steps down the line. Maybe the Raiders are the best team in football, and that never happens, but we all know that hell will freeze over before that actually happens.
And maybe Devontae will be the first former Packers teammate to actually be brought in and do something. So,
yeah, and we're not sitting here saying that Antonio Pierce is going to be a horrible coach. We just don't know. I don't think that there's going to be a repeat of when he took over as interim because they've had time to study film. They've had time to kind of figure out what his strengths and weaknesses are. Plus, we have Antonio Pierce, who brought in his own coaching staff. Now he's got his own players that he's bringing in, and we don't know if they're going to be a fit. So, not saying he's going to be bad, but there's also, kind of going back to Gardner Minshew, there's a reason why you don't usually hire the interim.
Well, the Raiders do play well for the interim coaches. I mean, the last two times they've plugged along and been successful.
I will say that Antonio Pierce's calling card isn't really X's and O's. It's more that CEO, leader of men type of head coach. And we've seen that can work at the NFL level with John Harbaugh. He's not, and same with his brother Jim. I'd argue Jim's more of an X's and O's guy than John is, but John's a guy who just kind of oversees the operation, motivates the guys in the locker room, and then hires good coaches, gets out of the way, and lets them do their job. Antonio Pierce went out and hired a very questionable offensive coordinator in Luke Getsy. And thus far, Luke Getsy's offense hasn't looked very good there in Las Vegas. You wonder, does Antonio Pierce have that ability to hire good coaches and then get out of the way? Clearly, guys like John Harbaugh do. Can Antonio Pierce kind of follow that same model? Right now, the evidence is suggesting no, based on the fact that he went out and hired Luke Getsy as his offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Harbaugh as the Chargers head coach. You know what you're getting with Harbaugh. We've seen what you get with Harbaugh. You've got Sean Payton with the Broncos. You know what you're getting with Payton. He's got lots of years of coaching experience. Andy Reid, you know what you're getting. And then there's Antonio Pierce with 2 starting backup quarterbacks. Just throwing that out there.
Yep. I mean, the Raiders are certainly the team with the lowest floor in the AFC West, and I don't think it's close.
Even though ESPN's power rankings have us, as of yesterday, 31st, only ahead of Carolina and 1 behind the Patriots. I mean, just makes no sense. I mean, you can't.
It really doesn't.
I mean, it's just garbage.
I don't get it. Well, are they seeing something that we're not?
Did people not see how bad the New York Giants quarterback room has been this offseason? I mean, Daniel Jones was putrid in his first preseason game back, like absolutely atrocious. And then they've got Drew Lock, who in his one preseason game that he's played looks like absolute garbage. And then they got Tommy Cutlass, the Italian stallion. I mean, that's all they've got, man. People say that the Broncos have the worst quarterback room in the NFL. Look at what the New York freaking Giants are working with right now and sit here and tell me that with a straight face. Seriously.
You know the Giants are going to be the team that signs Ryan Tannehill, right? Like that's going to be a thing.
Maybe the Buffalo Bills. Mitch Trubisky just went down with an injury, and right now all they've got is Ben DiNucci.
The Nooch.
Tommy DeVito.
Got out Brandon Perna.
That was one of the other teams I wanted to talk about was the Giants with Drew Lock, former Broncos quarterback. It looks like there is a good chance Drew Lock might start for the Giants.
Man, I mean, like I said, Daniel Jones was trash in that game. Again, Drew Lock also not great, Bob, but at this point, the Giants might as well see what they have. They already know what they've got in Daniel Jones, and it's not good. Inevitably, Jones is going to get hurt. He's going to play like garbage, so Drew Lock's going to start at some point this season. I guarantee that.
And I didn't watch that second preseason game with the Giants after Daniel Jones left, but I remember watching the first preseason game with the Giants because I was all excited to see what was going to happen with Malik Neighbors. And you had Drew Lock go in there, throw into triple coverage, and get a pick. It's like, oh, that looks familiar.
And he missed a wide open Malik Neighbors like 4 times in that game.
Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, the Giants are
the Giants are getting a turnover machine. There we go. Like,
I've heard that Tom Brady wants to play again. Does he want to go to the Giants? You have to do something. And then obviously everybody at this point has heard Justin Simmons signs a 1-year, $8 million contract with the Atlanta Falcons. And while that wasn't the first team in my mind, I mean, you're looking at Baltimore, you're looking at Kansas City, you're looking at Detroit, like those teams that are playoff Super Bowl contenders. Falcons never really creeped into my mind. But when you look at the NFC South, it kind of makes sense.
Certainly gives him his best shot that he's had in a long time to make the playoffs. His best shot at getting close to a championship. I certainly don't view the Atlanta Falcons as championship contenders. I think that their ceiling is capped at probably divisional round just because of who their quarterback is, quite frankly. But I feel like this is a great opportunity for Justin to make the playoffs for the first time in his NFL career. I'm very happy for him that he's been able to sign with the team at this point. Obviously, went down to New Orleans and visited with them first. That didn't materialize in a deal. A couple days later, the Falcons host him on a 2-day visit. He has dinner with Raheem Morris and some of the veteran players. One thing I'm really excited to see is Justin paired up with Jesse Bates in that defensive backfield. That's going to be really fun to watch. They probably now have the best safety tandem in the NFL with Simmons and Jesse Bates. So that's going to be really fun to watch. But I don't know, man. That wasn't exactly the team that I was eyeing for Justin Simmons. I was thinking, again, teams like Detroit, San Francisco, those were probably my top 2 destinations. But good for Justin. I'm really happy he's on a team. And we will see a Justin Simmons return to Denver game week 11 when the Atlanta Falcons come here. It's going to be very interesting to see a little bit later on in the season where both teams are. Are the Falcons competing for a playoff spot? Are the Broncos starting to hit their stride? Like, what's going to happen? Obviously, at that point, Denver's going to be coming off of those back-to-back games in Baltimore and Kansas City. It'll be their first game at home since then. So it'll be a good opportunity for them to maybe steal a win from the Falcons, but that's going to be a very emotional game. Probably going to get a tribute from Justin Simmons on the big video board. Probably going to get a standing ovation. I don't think there's any ill will or bad blood between Broncos country and Justin Simmons. In fact, I know there isn't. So, yeah, man, happy for Justin. And yeah, really happy for him.
You know, and Arthur Blank is reportedly one of those owners that is really supportive of players off the field endeavors. So the Justin Simmons Foundation should certainly be well supported down in Atlanta as well. Yeah. And I was happy to see that they did shift number 31 over to Justin. So he's got that and will continue to wear that number. I think you're going to start seeing some red and black Falcons jerseys or T-shirts with 31 Simmons on the back out in Denver, Gage.
Yep.
So I'm looking at this power rankings you were talking about. Denver 31st, and all they talk about is Dulcich.
He's on the hot seat.
Well, I get that.
That's the other premise. They did the power rankings.
They're behind New England Patriots, which doesn't make any sense. They don't even know who their starting quarterback's going to be. I mean, you got Joe Milton, who's playing better than Drake May at this point.
And Gerard Mayo, I mean, Glenn, you're obviously up in that neck of the woods, a little bit closer to the New England media. But based on what we've seen out here, Gerard Mayo has expressed zero confidence in Drake May as his quarterback.
Right. I would not anticipate that he's the week 1 starter. He did play well in the last preseason game. Certainly a lot better. I mean, he had 1 drive in the first preseason game, which made no sense. The fans certainly wanted to see more of him. They were pretty upset that he got pulled. Not quite sure there was any sort of explanation why he didn't get any more playing time in game 1. Had some nice plays in game 2, but I think it's a Jacoby Brissett team. No chance Joe Milton starts this for the Patriots.
No. And then Arizona Cardinals. They really don't have that good of a roster.
They don't, but I think that with the Murray to Marvin Harrison connection, I think that they're at least going to make some splash plays, and they're at least going to be a fun team to watch. But I think they lack talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah. And then the Commanders. I can see that one. They got some talent.
Dude, you still haven't named the Giants.
Yeah, we still haven't gotten to the Giants yet.
I haven't gotten to them yet.
That's ridiculous.
Where are the Vikings? Like
right over the Commanders is the Raiders at 27, and this is after the preseason game, which doesn't make any sense. So
still way too late for the Giants.
Yeah, right above the Raiders at 26 is the Giants.
God,
and they're up from 28.
What?
You got me. This is ESPN,
dude.
I don't know.
No, like I think that the Commanders have a higher ceiling, especially with how well Jaden Daniels has played. The Giants are absolute hot steaming garbage. The Patriots are absolute hot steaming garbage. They're absolute
booty cheeks.
Yes, they are absolute booty cheeks. No, I don't understand these power rankings. I feel like they again are not very well informed takes.
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating to see.
Saints at 25, Titans at 24, Vikings at 23. And that's with them talking about how JJ McCarthy is not the starter. It's going to be Sam Darnold. And listen, Sam Darnold may have had a resurgence, but not that big a one.
I think I'm one of the only ones that is a little higher on the Vikings. I think that they're going to be okay. It's going to be hard to screw things up when you've got guys like Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison to throw the ball to, TJ Hawkinson when he comes back. So as long as Darnold kind of gets out of the way and doesn't fuck up, then he's good.
Hawkinson. Yeah.
Right above the Vikings is Seattle and then Tampa. And then we start getting into Chargers is at 20.
I think
they don't have any receivers.
I think that's pretty fair for the Chargers. I think that considering they have Justin Herbert, and they've got presumably a good coaching staff with Harbaugh, I think that's fair. I think that's too low for Tampa, though. They freaking won the NFC South for the last 3 years in a row. They've clearly got a really good culture that they're building there. Baker Mayfield is a more than capable guy to lead them to the playoffs again. And I still think that the Atlanta Falcons have question marks. Matthew Judon only played in, 4 or 5 games for the Patriots before getting hurt last year. That they still have questions on that pass rush outside of him. Their secondary's good. I will give them that. But can Kirk Cousins stay healthy? Can Matthew Judon stay healthy? Is their coaching staff the right guys for the job? I have a lot of questions about the Atlanta Falcons. So Tampa Bay, I feel like, should be higher, and they should also be up there with the playoff contenders. So that's too low for Tampa Bay for me.
Pittsburgh's at 16.
Yo.
Thank the defense for that.
Bears are at 17, Steelers at 16, Jets at 15. What other stupid ones we got in here?
People are really banking on them New York Jets, man.
Browns at 12, Cowboys at 11. Okay.
Browns at 12 gets me because it's like, do you really think that Deshaun Watson is going to suddenly have this career resurgence.
Okay, the rest I can agree with, like Chiefs, Ravens, Niners, Lions, Eagles, all top 5. I get that.
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
I will say Brock Purdy did not look good in the last game.
I didn't see it.
No, it was bad. You can definitely tell that. Well, maybe not tell, but you can definitely infer that Brock Purdy's being carried by Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. Like, you can tell. All right. I think that about covers all the stupidity. The rest is pretty accurate. I am excited to see.
I hope he's talking about the list and not our previous 65 minutes. Great.
No. I am excited to see big old slow Ezekiel Elliott running the ball in Dallas again. That should be fun.
Dude, Cowboys are going to be garbage. They're not even going to make the playoffs this year.
No.
I want to see him try to climb into the Salvation Army.
Okay. You just fall in and tip over.
He fills it with chili.
All right. Anything else that we didn't cover? Any last minute thoughts you guys want to get out?
Good. I think we got it.
Great chat tonight. Thank you, guys.
Yep. We want to thank everybody for joining us in the chat. Doug, it's the first time I've seen you in the chat. That is awesome. Graham, thanks for joining Sports Nonsense. Who else we got up here? David Burns.
Clayton.
A 6'10" Mexican. Clayton. Adon, obviously. Virginia Hernandez. Listen, you can be a Queese fan. That's fine. You are more than welcome to be in the chat. We can show our team can show you what a good quarterback looks like. Okay, so just go ahead and enjoy the chat for the Broncos. It's fine.
I do not endorse this guy's comment.
Everybody obviously knows I'm kidding. Avatar jumping in. Ray Haas jumping in. The royalty of MHRT. Noah Bryan, Dreamweaver. Appreciate every single one of you joining us in the chat. Make sure you check out all the other shows on the network. We have a whole bunch. We've got shows Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then the neighborhood's starting back up on Sundays when we have Broncos games. We're also partnering with the Orange and Blue Network just to give everybody more content, more opinions, a different variety of shows to check out. So make sure you check those guys out as well. It's going to be pretty cool. Now, I did want to bring one thing up, and you guys are going to like this. So you guys know Bill. You know that Bill is a very negative person. So Bill decided to tell me that if Bo Nix was starting against the Seahawks, we were going to get crushed. So I said, let's make a bet. If Bo Nix is a starter and Denver beats Seattle, Bill has to do an entire episode not of Broncos breakdown, but Chargers checkdown. And he has to do it all in Chargers gear on Chargers Broncos week.
He just has to go to his closet, open it up, and decide.
Right?
The hardest thing is going to be
Chargers stuff out.
Do I put my Dan Fouts on, or do I go with John Jefferson?
Just so everybody knows, this is what is on the line when the Broncos and the Seahawks play. So when we win against the Seahawks, everybody needs to make sure they tune in to Bill wearing all his Chargers gear, doing a Chargers checkdown episode. It's going to be great. And with that, we're going to take off. We love you guys. We love Broncos country. We love the Broncos. Peace out.
Fast lane when I pass in the street. Bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast record